This is Marcus Corval with Studio MMA and MMA Nut, and we're here with the man, the voice behind the UFC, Joe Rogan. How you feeling?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. How excited are you for tomorrow's matchups, and what fight do you think is going to be better? Brock Lesnar versus Alistair Overeem, or Nate Diaz versus Cerrone, Cowboy Cerrone?
You know what? I think they're both going to be amazing. I mean, who knows which one's going to be better? You know, that remains to be seen, but they're both incredible matchups, and I'm jazzed up about both of them.
We got two guys that combine a weight of over 500 pounds in there tomorrow, but they move like a lot lighter guys. And this fight's been hyped for a while. Obviously, we got the former Strikeforce champion coming in, former K1 champion, who's got so much experience compared to Brock Lesnar. But what do you think about Brock Lesnar? When it comes to his record, he hasn't been around in MMA for that long, but how does he cope with experience such as Alistair Overeem?
Well, you know, he has the biggest base. The most important base is wrestling, and that's the thing that Brock is an expert at. Brock's troubles, the troubles that he's had in the past, are with guys who can handle that wrestling because they're wrestlers themselves. You know, Shane Carwin, of course, gave him a lot of problems in the first round, and, of course, Cain Velasquez stopped him. Those are the two guys that gave him the most problems, and I think that's because of their wrestling skill. You know, with Alistair, you have an amazing striker. The big question is, can he stop the shot? And has he ever faced a wrestler anything like Brock before? Because, you know, unless you've had that experience of a 265-pound super athlete on top of you, smashing you and holding you down, you really don't know what it's like. You know, I don't know. He's had a lot of MMA experience, but when you fought guys in Japan, I mean, he never really fought a wrestler. Never fought a big, strong, powerful wrestler. Never fought anybody like Brock. Of course, Brock has never fought anybody with the striking credentials that he possesses. And, you know, if Alistair gets a hold of him on the way in and catches him with a knee, if he can time a knee, or if he can catch him with some punches and get Brock on the defensive, then it can get really hairy for him. You know, the real key to this fight is the takedowns. If Brock can execute the takedown and he can get Alistair on his back, man, then it becomes Brock's world. You know, of course, Alistair's no stranger to the submission game. He won the Abu Dhabi European Trials. He submitted Vitor Belfort. He has an amazing guillotine. He gets a hold of your neck, man. You got problem. He's got these giant arms, and he's a super powerful dude. And he's technical. He's very technical on the ground. You know, if he can get a hold of Brock's neck, you know, he might be able to submit him. But, man, stopping that power shot and stopping that ground and pound, that is the big key. Frank Mir couldn't do it in his last fight. He couldn't submit him, and we know Frank Mir is probably the best heavyweight submission artist on the planet. He couldn't submit him. He submitted him in his first fight, but Brock was completely green. You know, he only had one MMA fight previous, and it was against a guy who just ran right through. So experience-wise, I would say maybe Alistair has more experience, but Brock has experience inside the octagon, you know, and he's fought Randy Couture, he's fought Shane Carwin, you know, he's fought Cain Velasquez, he's fought Heath Harris, he's fought these guys inside the octagon, and there's something to be said about that. It's a different experience when you come to the biggest mixed martial arts organization in the world, you get in that arena, and you hear 18,000 people going fucking ape shit. That's a different experience, man, and for a lot of people, that experience, even Mayhem Miller, you know, Jason Mayhem Miller wilted under the bright light. You know, and that's what happens, man. It's just, even though you have a ton of experience, there's a big difference between that experience and the experience at the big show. The big show is a completely different thing.
You obviously sat cage side for quite a few fights. How different is the cage in Strikeforce versus the cage, the octagon for the UFC?
Not that much different. You know, if you're accustomed to fighting in a cage, you're accustomed to fighting in a cage. The question is, who has Alistair fought in the cage before? Well, he fought Paul Buentello. You know, Buentello's not the same caliber. He's a good fighter, but he's not the same caliber. You know, he fought, what's his face? What does he call himself? The Reaper? Gary? No, God damn it, I'm blanking on his name. He fought Verdum, but right before Verdum. The fuck is his name? The guy who Fedor fought him as well. Thank you.
Brett Rogers.
Yeah. Brett the Grim Rogers. Sorry, Brett. Don't hit me. He fought Brett Rogers, and, you know, Brett Rogers did not belong in the ring with him. Technically, physically, Brett Rogers is a brawler, you know, and he likes to come and brawl. And you ain't going to brawl with Alistair Overeem. You want to stand with that guy, you're fucked. You know, if you want to stand and trade shots with that guy, he's the most technical heavyweight, period, on the planet. There's no one who's going to be able to stand with him and strike with him. The big question is, guys like Verdum, who he knew wanted to take him down and try to submit him, then, you know, Verdum's coming at him with all these different shots because Alistair's worrying about the takedown. That's a fight to look at. And that's a fight where quite honestly, Alistair just didn't look that good. And I know he had some training issues. I know he had some injuries coming into that fight. He had a rib issue that kept him from training to his full potential, so his cardio suffered. But who's to say that he doesn't have some issues coming into this fight? You know, this is the biggest fight of his life. I'm sure he trained incredibly hard for this. He put on a ton of size. He's big as hell, you know, so there's a lot of questions, man. There's a lot of questions. But the number one question is, can he handle the big wrestler? Because that's always the big problem. The big problem is the big wrestler. And the only people that have really been good at handling the big wrestlers are wrestlers themselves. When you see an elite wrestler, like here's a perfect example, Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva. And again, Anderson Silva, according to all the training reports, was not at his full peak potential when he fought Chael Sonnen. He had a rib injury himself. But look how easy Chael Sonnen took him down. Look how easy Chael Sonnen dominated that fight until he got caught because Anderson wasn't able to stop the shot. You know, you can't be a good striker and just get your striking off if you can't stop the shot. Stopping the shot is everything. And having the endurance to deal with this big motherfucker on top of you, punching you in the head and elbowing you and smashing you and just keeping his weight on you, you know, holding it, and then the anxiety of this guy being on top of you. There's so many things to consider. We will find out exactly how this fight's going to go within the first couple minutes. Because if Brock comes out like a freight train and grabs Alistair and slams him on the ground, then shit just got crazy. And then it's lunchbox fists and, you know. But if Alistair somehow or another gets underhooks, pushes him off and whacks him, gets a leg kick off, catches him with a punch, then shit gets crazy on the other end. Then, you know, then Brock Lesnar, who's a novice striker. Yeah. I mean, really, would you give him a blue belt as a striking guy? I mean, against like a 10th degree black belt,
orange,
one Grand Prix champion. You know what I mean? I mean, you look at the different. Brock is a big guy who can punch hard because he's a strong guy, whereas Alistair is the most technical striker, arguably in MMA. The guy who wins the K1 Grand Prix. I mean, there might be lighter guys who could do more spectacular things, but as far as his striking credentials, as far as like what he's accomplished, his pedigree, he's a fucking K1 Grand Prix champion, period. That's the best kickboxer on the planet. You know, and yeah, he fought, that was when Bader wasn't there, and, you know, but still, he had to beat 3 hard-ass dudes to get to that, you know, to get to that title. So there's a lot of questions, man. You know, K1 is totally different. They have the big gloves. They stand right in front of each other. You know, they check leg kicks. They're all up high. They're not worried about that shot. And, you know, it's hard to make that adjustment. You know, to make that adjustment after having fought all those K1 fights for a couple years. He was straight K1, you know, trying to get the Grand Prix. And then, you know, a guy like Brett Rogers doesn't show you anything because Rogers just didn't.
And he doesn't have the wrestling either.
Doesn't have the wrestling, and he just doesn't belong in the ring with him. It's not the same caliber. He got manhandled. You know, he got manhandled. But the Verdum fight gives you more insight. The Verdum fight, he got tired. Yeah. You know, Verdum charged him with some wild shit and still connected with some stuff. He covered up pretty good for the most part, but, you know, the reality is this cover up like this, which is amazing with the big boxing gloves on. It's not the same with those little gloves. You know, shit gets through. Even you take punches to your gloves, man, when you have your gloves up.
We've got another K1 guy here who knows about that, right?
Knows? Come on, man. Antony Hardonk could give you some instruction. Tell you, come over here, sir.
He actually kicked me today this morning.
Also,
so I know.
Dynamics Mixed Martial Arts in Santa Monica, if anybody wants to learn. Tell me what you think about this Alistair Overeem, Brock Lesnar fight. It's really all about stopping the takedown, right? I mean,
the first 3 minutes are going to be crucial.
Yeah.
And I think the first 3 minutes, Brock is going to come out hard. Maybe he circles around a little bit, but sooner or later he's going to jump in and give it his all. And I think it's interesting to see how Alistair's going to deal with that.
Yeah.
And here's a question for you. You've trained with Alistair, obviously, and how do you think his stamina is? You mentioned before that, you know, when he fought Verdum, but Verdum doesn't have the takedowns that Brock does. How do you think he will keep stamina-wise with someone if he goes into the second, third round or so on?
I don't think that the physical stamina is crucial here. I think the mental stamina. I think that's what's going to be
calm, not letting the moment dwarf you.
And like they're both guys that like to overpower people and they go hard, you know. But like how do you overpower people when you're being dominated? And that's going to be interesting to see. Like they always have their physique, which this time they don't really have that much.
And here's another question for you. You've fought Pat Barry, and you also trained with Pat Barry in the past. Brock Lesnar brought in Pat Barry for his camp, which is a great fighter, a great kickboxer, but he's not at all the same size as Alistair.
No.
What do you think of that?
I don't know. I great entertainment on
funny
the team. He's funny. I don't know. I don't think that covers like the no. That's not gonna duplicate the Alistair in the training.
And back.
Alistair's a much higher level striker. He's a much bigger guy. And, you know, Pat Barry had been working with Brock Lesnar for a while because Pat was he's doing that death clutch camp to work on his faults, you know, his weaknesses. Yeah.
Now back to the jiu-jitsu, and you obviously you're a brown belt under the brother, right?
Yeah.
Do you think Alistair could submit a wrestler such as Brock Lesnar?
Yes, he can submit anybody. Brock, you know, look, he won the Abu Dhabi European Trials. He submitted Vitor Belfort. He's a legit black belt in the ground. I mean, he really has black belt level skills. But you know what? Brock Lesnar is a physical freak, and as far as like a grappler, Brock Lesnar is a far superior grappler, and he can keep that going for several rounds. He's got amazing endurance for a big guy. You know, for a really, you know why? And one of the reasons why is because that is his real size. Yeah. Brock Lesnar's got a fucking head that's that wide, and that's, you know, that's what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be 265 pounds. And, you know, what Alistair's done is taking a guy who fought at 205 and probably walked around at like 220, very lean, had a hard time making light heavyweight. So he said, let me just pack on a bunch of muscle, which is great if you can kick guys' asses. But when you get tired, man, all that extra muscle is unnecessary. You don't see guys that are built like Alistair Overeem usually become successful. And the reason for that is because you got to fuel all those muscles. He has a very unusual combination of technique and that physical strength that you very rarely see. You very rarely see a guy who's that technical, a kickboxer, who gets really big, you know, really pumps up. And he did it to start dominating guys in K1. And in K1, man, you see, like, when you stand there and you got all this muscle, I mean, it's like armor, you know, you're like armored, you know, and he can push guys around, and he's got power in his shots. He's very technical with his striking. So all that muscle didn't hurt him. But if you notice, like, you look at a guy like Gokhan Saki, or, you know, look at a Remy Bonjasky, the kind of shots that they'll throw combinations, whereas he doesn't do that. He throws, like, he's conserving his energy. Even if you watch his K1 bouts, he conserves energy. And I think a lot of that has to do with all the muscle that he carries around.
Do you think it's also important for him not to throw combinations to avoid the takedown?
Well, he can throw combinations, but it depends on which tools he chooses. Like, I don't think he should kick too much. You know, be conservative with the kicks. Focus more on the hands and the knees.
Like he did against Verdum.
Yeah, but he'll know what to do.
His knees are one of his best weapons, yes. And that's one thing also where his physical strength comes into play. K1 changed the rules because of Alistair's knees. I mean, think about that.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah, K1 used to allow you to double palm the back of the head, and then they switched to single palm. The reason why I switched to single palm because Alistair would just grab guys and blam, and that was the fight. He's so fucking strong. He grabs a hold of the back of your head. You know, he gets you in that plum clinch, and those knees start coming. You know, they literally changed the rules because of his style of fighting.
Now, I don't think you're allowed to, but you are. Prediction for tomorrow's fight. Can you turn up the music a bit?
The music came at the perfect time.
You ordered that, right? Hey, man, studio, man. Wait down, we gotta go.